Hey family, this is Video Log 11, and we have more clarifying questions that lead to chalk outlines. Our questions today are about how does bias and representation affect policing? What it truly comes down to is seeing the humanity in those that are being policed. There is plenty of qualified, available literature about implicit bias and unconscious bias, so I don't really want to go in that direction. My hope is to provide nuance and understanding to these concepts. In this case, a consideration for how the concept looks in practice. I often think people miss the degree of latitude police officers have by virtue of the fact that an officer or a unit is highly autonomous, and often police officers are called to address problems that require non-textbook solutions, assuming they're even law enforcement situations. This can and has also been applied to traditional law enforcement situations. So, field vouchering. There may or may not be a way in which small quantities of narcotics are addressed without an arrest. Sometimes, in lieu of an arrest for possession and vouchering a small amount of contraband for prosecution, said quantity may be similarly vouchered into a sewage drain or vouchered into the air in small pieces. Sometimes, in an officer's desire to verify the contents of a bag of an unknown substance, the entire bag of the substance may be pushed deep into the testing kit, leaving nothing remaining of which to create probable cause to arrest, if you catch my drift. The thing is, do you think one is more or less likely to experience these opportunities for latitude if you don't connect with the individual and the community on a human level? I think there might be an argument that you're less likely to entertain these alternate forms of discretion if you don't see the humanity and the similarities between yourself and the communities that you police. Keep in mind, there is a positive correlation between wealth and successful outcomes in the criminal justice system. The correlation starts with how and when you interact with law enforcement. Too often the types or severity of crimes one is charged with, to the ability to process bail standards to the quality of counsel, and then to nuances with the adjudication of the case, including appeals. Money often equals connections, directly through the individual or through one's counsel. Last note, do you remember last year when Philadelphia, Phoenix, other localities, and some federal officers were investigated, fired, or suspended en masse for their Facebook groups and posts? The investigation into the prejudice and racist postings and leanings in these groups and through other messaging formats of officers has continued into this year as well. There's still quite a bit of action to be taken. Now, keep in mind, many of these individuals are still policing our communities. There's a lot of people who share these viewpoints and their positions are not publicly known. Yet I do believe that their bias will materialize in some way sooner or later. The concept is simple. Think of how marketing works. Your first exposure to a product does not convince you to buy it generally. But prolonged exposure often wears down your inhibitions, and you decide to try out the product. Often bias works the same way: implicit, unconscious, and conscious. In all likelihood, it will eventually affect your treatment or interaction with the community. This may or may not be seen in the way of brutality. It may be displayed simply through indifference, a lack of respect, or an unwillingness to develop rapport. With that, I love you all. Peace and blessings. 06.